I was lounging on my newly delivered gaming chair, thoroughly enjoying the comfort, scrolling through eBay Dreams, my go-to online shopping site. Suddenly, a pop-up caught my eye, a store named Dream City, boasting sales figures surpassing many established shops within just 2 weeks. Quite the achievement for a newcomer. Curiosity piqued. I dived deeper into Dream City's page, which was oddly minimalistic, offering no product categories. Instead, a bold red link stood out, promising custom-made products to realize any dream you might have, for the right price, of course. Skeptical yet intrigued, I clicked on the link. It prompted me to enter whatever I wanted. No request too big or small. So, in a moment of whimsy, mixed with a dash of desperation, I typed in boyfriend. The next thing I know, I got a confirmation for the purchase and an $800 charge to my student budget. Rational thoughts screamed scam, but the idea of actually achieving my dream made me dismiss the doubt. That night was restless, filled with bizarre dreams of crimson shades and a distorted smile belonging to a boy I fancied for the longest time, yet who was clearly out of reach. The real horror began the following day. Running late for class, I made a quick stop at the school bathroom, only to stumble upon a nightmare, the murder scene of my crush's girlfriend, drenched in blood inside one of the stalls. This horrific discovery shattered the mundane reality I knew. Anchored by guilt and fear, my life spiraled into chaos. The police ruled it an accident, but the air whispered foul play, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was inadvertently responsible. In a bid to seek solace, I became entangled with the boy, the very subject of my misguided wish, offering support through his grief. As our bond deepened, my guilt gnawed at me, threatening the thin veneer of normalcy we were weaving. I found myself returning to Dream City, this time in a twisted effort to enhance my appearance, hoping to further cement the budding relationship. But as the nature of these purchases entailed, the cost was far more sinister than monetary. Events took a darker turn when I tried to inflict petty revenge on a girl who bullied me. The purchase from Dream City wasn't just a product, it was a catalyst for catastrophe. She suffered an accident that left her disfigured, a horrifying echo of my earlier naive request. With each transaction, my life entwined further with these unexplainable tragedies, leading me down a path from which there was no return. My obsession with manipulating fate through Dream City blinded me to the harsh truth. The real horror wasn't the website, but the choices I made and the invisible price attached to them. Haunted by the consequences of my actions and trapped in a web of paranoia, I attempted one final purchase from Dream City. Truth, a commodity more dangerous than all others. But truth, as I would soon learn, came with its own dreadful cost. The climax of my tale is as tragic as it is ironic. My relentless pursuit of desires through unnatural means led to an irreversible breakdown, leaving me a shell of my former self, confined within the dreary walls of a mental institution. What remained of me was nothing but a whisper of insanity, endlessly repeating the mantra of accidents and truths, too horrifying to comprehend. Looking back, I realized that the true terror didn't lurk in the shadowy corners of an online store, but in the depths of human longing and the unforeseen consequences of trying to bend fate. Dream City was never the villain. It was merely a mirror, reflecting the darkest aspects of desire and the prices we're willing to pay, oblivious to the real horrors those payments unleash. A cautionary tale indeed of wishes and the unseen chains they forge. Stay safe out there, folks. Not all dreams are meant to be pursued. One night around 10:43 p.m., in a 12-story apartment building known for housing mostly singles and young professionals, I found myself wrapped in a peculiar sense of dread. After a long, tiring day and a refreshing shower, I slipped into my pajamas and grabbed a carton of milk from my fridge, standing by the window to drink it. The view of the city lights at night from my 6th-floor apartment was usually a sight I cherished. My job as a fitness instructor at the local gym kept me in shape, and I was used to keeping a strict schedule to balance work and personal life. Feeling unexpectedly alert after the day's fatigue, I decided to read a bit before bed, a habit I found relaxing. But tonight, something felt off. After turning off the harsh overhead light and sitting down with just a lamp on, an uneasy feeling washed over me. The room seemed darker, and my heart raced for reasons I couldn't place. I tried to brush off the feeling, telling myself I was just overtired. Attempting to quench a sudden, intense thirst, I went for a bottle of water, moving cautiously in my own apartment as if it were unfamiliar terrain. Once back in bed, the discomfort escalated, enveloping me in an almost tangible pressure. Rationality told me it was all in my head, but the fear felt too real. Then, thinking I heard faint, unidentifiable sounds, I scanned my apartment. Nothing seemed amiss until my gaze landed on a package I'd received earlier that day. It was an item I'd ordered online on a whim, now lying discarded on the floor. For some reason, it now commanded my attention with an eerie urgency. Approaching the package, my unease grew. The room felt heavier, the air around me charged with a foreboding sense. Fumbling with my phone to text a friend for some semblance of connection to the outside world, my hands shook uncontrollably and the phone slipped away. Suddenly, noises from the hallway snapped me back to a chilling reality. Someone or something was outside my door. The thought of facing what was on the other side paralyzed me with fear. The idea of escaping my apartment seemed both urgent and impossible. With great effort, I managed to open the door, expecting the worst. The hallway was empty, eerily silent. This moment of supposed relief did not last, as my heart continued to race, urging me to leave this place. On unsteady legs, I stepped out, planning to take the elevator down and away from this suffocating anxiety. Just as I made my move, a chilling realization hit me. This wasn't about ghosts or supernatural entities. The real terror was far more mundane, but no less frightening. I had been receiving threats for weeks from a disgruntled ex-client from the gym, someone whose advances I had rejected. The stalking, the veiled threats, it all culminated in this night of terror, with my mind playing tricks on me, amplifying my fear. In this moment of clarity, I recognized the true nature of my fear. It wasn't the apartment or the night that was to blame, but a very real, very human danger. I made it downstairs and out into the night, heading straight to a friend's place, vowing to deal with this situation head-on from now on. Sharing this story here is not just about venting, but a reminder to myself and others. Sometimes the most terrifying experiences are rooted in reality, and facing them directly is the only way out. It's not something I usually do, but man, I can't shake it off. My sister, let's call her Jenny, is one of those daredevils, always chasing thrills and adventure. I'm not like her at all. Give me a book, and I'm good for the day. Despite our differences, we get along pretty well, though Jenny always ribs me for my cautious nature. This all started when Jenny heard a rumor from her friend, who had recently been to a neighboring town, about an old house that was supposedly haunted. Of course, being a horror movie fanatic, Jenny was all over it. She managed to drag me into her plans, along with 3 of our friends, turning it into some sort of amateur explorer group. The house in question was a decrepit mansion, abandoned for over 40 years. It was known around the area for being the last residence of a well-off family before they up and left under mysterious circumstances. Recently, it's been used by construction workers as a storage spot until a couple of them had, let's just say, unpleasant experiences. One guy lost his mind overnight, and another swore he saw something unclean. After that, workers refused to go near it. Despite all the warnings, Jenny and the gang were set on exploring the place, thinking they'd find some supernatural thrill or some hidden treasure, maybe. We prepped for a week, making up excuses for our folks and gathering what we deemed necessary. Flashlights, lighters, some makeshift weapons, and these so-called protective charms Jenny ordered online. The evening we set out, we ran into this eerie figure on our way. A street preacher or something, with this intense gaze that creeped us out, but we pressed on, determined. So reaching the mansion by dusk, we breached the entrance. Inside, it was just as you'd expect. Old furniture, piles of junk, and construction materials. While we were deciding on where to camp inside the mansion, the atmosphere grew tense as night fell. A couple of hours in, one of our friends stepped out to relieve himself and didn't return, which spiked our anxiety. Then, out of nowhere, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the night, followed by a frantic commotion outside. We were paralyzed with fear, unable to decide whether to investigate or stay put. Then suddenly, everything went silent. As the tension became unbearable, the youngest among us, I'll call him Chris, muttered about hearing someone calling out to play. Before we could react, The friendly figure from before, the street preacher, appeared, calming us down and explaining he was investigating the house for its history of attracting troubled spirits. Needless to say, we bolted out of there, following the preacher as screams and chaos ensued behind us. Jenny and I, adrenaline pumping, managed to drag our frightened selves and Chris back to safety, the preacher, revealing himself as a kind of spiritual guide, escorted us home, claiming he had calmed the restless spirit causing the disturbance. We never found out who or what was in that house, nor did we ever see that preacher again. But one thing's for sure, Jenny and I haven't gone looking for adventures since. And those protective charms, they're sitting in a drawer somewhere collecting dust. Whether it was the preacher or just blind luck that got us out, I'm not keen to find out. So, let this be a reminder, folks. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. A couple of years ago, I went through something that still sends chills down my spine every time I think about it. It's honestly not something I talk about much, but I think it might serve as a cautionary tale for others, so here goes. I was in my second year of college, studying hard and trying to make the most out of my education. I wasn't exactly the social butterfly, you could say. I had a few close friends, but that was about it. My friend Sarah and I were particularly close. We'd been roommates since freshman year and got along really well despite our differences. Sarah was from a modest family, always a bit more eager to fit in, and perhaps a bit too trusting for her own good. I, on the other hand, came from a well-off family. This afforded me the luxury of renting a small apartment off campus instead of staying in the dorms. After a year of convincing, Sarah finally decided to move in with me, thrilled at the idea of escaping the dreary dorm life. Life in the apartment was good. We had our routine down, shared chores, and cooked meals together. One day, we stumbled upon a local farmer's market where a vendor was selling exotic meats, among them ostrich meat. Having never tried it and intrigued by the novelty, we bought a few pounds. That night, we prepared the meat, and it was unlike anything we had ever tasted. It was incredibly delicious, so much so that it became a bit of an obsession for us. However, as weeks turned into months, the vendor suddenly disappeared. It didn't take long for us to notice that no other food satisfied us quite like that meat had. Everything else seemed bland in comparison. Concerned about our sudden change in diet and health, we decided to seek medical advice, fearing we might have contracted a disease from consuming exotic meats. The reality, however, turned out to be much more sinister. Our haunting suspicion was confirmed by a breaking news report revealing that the vendor had been arrested for a series of brutal murders in the area. The most chilling part, he had been selling the flesh of his victims as exotic meats at the local farmer's market. The ostrich meat we had relished was human flesh. The realization was nauseating, and the guilt and horror of what we had unknowingly partaken in consumed us. It was an unwitting violation of our most basic moral principles, one that has left a permanent scar. That night took a dark turn when a guy from our class, notorious for his lewd behavior, followed Sarah home. Insisting on studying together but clearly harboring malicious intent. In a desperate attempt to defend herself, Sarah struck him with a vase, knocking him unconscious. Panicking and fearing the worst, we decided to call the police. But as we were about to, he woke up, threatening to accuse us of assault if we reported him. Fueled by fear, anger, and a grim desire for self-preservation, we made a choice that night that would forever change the course of our lives. We decided to ensure he could never harm us or anyone else again. In a twisted sense of justice, and driven by the same base instinct that had driven the vendor, we disposed of the evidence in the only way we knew would leave no trace. This might sound unbelievable, a story born from the darkest corners of human imagination, yet it's my story. It's a series of events that unfolded over the course of several months, changing my view of humanity and myself. I'm not sharing this story, seeking forgiveness or to absolve myself of my actions. I've made peace with the fact that what we did was a result of an extraordinary set of circumstances, pushed to the brink by fear and survival instincts. Instead, I'm sharing it as a stark reminder of the dark places the human mind can go when faced with unimaginable choices, and the importance of staying vigilant about whom we trust and the choices we make.